Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Unfiltered Vet Discussions. Myself, Kelly, Peter, Stacy, and Cody are here today, and you can see us all at unfilteredvetdiscussions.com, as well as hear us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and I'm forgetting one, LinkedIn. There we go. So today we want to talk about looking outside our borders for veterinary care. Peter was just in Australia. Cody habituates in Canada. And Stacy and I have been to many different countries and had many different conversations. So Peter, why don't you start?
It's as a veterinarian in the United States, and my apologies to Cody, we think we rule the world when it comes down to everything. But we think we do everything perfectly. We do everything the best. We have just such a jingoistic approach to things, not just in veterinary medicine, by the way. So it's been interesting to watch my daughter in Australia delivering veterinary services. It's been interesting to speak to colleagues in Mexico because I've spoken in Mexico 5-6 times, and I've got 2 more coming up this year. I have a colleague who's a consultant who lives in the UK, consults in Europe and Central and South America, and I've been to Asia. And you know what? We do a good job in the US, but everybody else does a good job too, because you have to meet the needs of your population. And it was interesting speaking to some veterinarians in Mexico where the office call is $5. And it's also interesting to know in Australia that the minimum wage is $25. So we may think we're the best in the world in everything in the United States, but I have to give a lot of credit to what I saw in Japan in terms of technology and client service, client experience. I've got to give a tremendous shout out to the way people in lower income areas of South and Central America and Mexico deliver care to people whose pets are part of the family just as much as they are in the United States. And I think we can learn in many ways from others how to do things differently. And as you all know, I'm all about disrupting and doing things differently. So I think Cody represents a great business model for Canada that maybe can be extrapolated into the United States at some point in time. But I think all of us have had different international experiences that we can tap into. And I think we have to stop just thinking about ourselves and understand what can we learn from outside of our own borders.
Well, there's no question Canada is light years ahead of the US when it comes to veterinary care and customer experience. But that said, yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think the thing that resonated with me the most there was serving, the need of your customer and how that does change. And I think that's what is lost sight of often. How often are we doing a self-reflection and audit within our industry to make sure that we truly are fulfilling the needs of that customer? And that is phasic. That shifts, that changes. We're seeing that pattern right now in the US and Canada with the current economic situation, that things do flux and move, and we have people that are not able to afford some of their veterinary care right now, and to be open to the conversations of what else can we do? Back to our concept of incremental vet care, being able to meet somebody where they are. That you don't have to start a vet practice in South America to meet somebody where they are in terms of the services you offer. You have to be looking close at home as well, because that's always changing.
I think too, back to the last discussion we had on pricing. So I was in Mexico City in November, which is about 6 months ago. hanging out with 4 veterinarians. We went to a very nice dinner. It was great. And they were telling me, for when I think of medicine in Mexico, veterinary medicine in Mexico, I have this bias and I think it's all low income, right? It's all $5 exam, very basic. They probably don't have all the things that we have as our snooty Americans, how we like to think. But then as I'm having dinner with them, this one of the veterinarians there, she's telling me she has 5 clinics, she has an MRI unit, she's able to do disc surgeries, TPLOs, they're doing all the things. And I asked her, what's it cost for a disc decompression? And she said, it's about $1,000 US, where you're going to pay 3 to 5 easy for that in the US. And these are highly trained, skilled professionals. So it's not the low income border town medicine you might be thinking. It's quality stuff. And I realized that their cost of living is different and all of that. But they said that what they told me is they are having huge surges of Americans come across the border to get their pet treated. And then they go back home. And that was kind of eye-opening for me.
Well, if it makes sense financially, I mean, we were talking about financially feeling the pinch. Cody, you were just alluding to that. And I can take my dog to Mexico City and get a service that is basically what, a third less than what you can do here. I mean, it's just not dogs. I have family members who have gone to get teeth done there and who have had elective surgeries down there. And it's high quality, better care, actually. So I'm not surprised that they're loading up the family pets and trotting them across the border as well, and then bringing them back for an economic decision when you sounds like the care is equally the same. I mean, you choose wisely. You choose wisely in the United States. I'm sure you choose wisely in Canada. You choose wisely there, but the equality is the same. Now, we can't pack up dogs and take them to Australia. We could probably run them up to see you, Cody, depending, but it's a real thing, right? So it sounds like our perception of self is maybe a little half bubble off here in the United States.
So why is that? If the quality is as good and the equipment is as good, of course I know several of the answers, but like, why is there's such a discrepancy, right? Like, why are we able to offer that? I would argue that for the most part, my practice, which is not the most expensive practice in Calgary by any stretch of the imagination, is still expensive in comparison to many US counterparts, because of my operating costs. What are we missing here? Is it truly just our minimum wage, our labor costs that are driving our veterinary costs up so much? Or is it our cost of goods sold? Obviously, we know that in some of these countries, they're able to purchase the same pharmaceuticals from the same manufacturers at 30 to 50% discount. This is why these online pet pharmacies that are sourcing Dominican Republic parasiticides that are sold by Boehringer at a fraction of the cost to that marketplace exist, right? Like, what are we missing? Are we truly, do we need to start looking at our costs, or how do we fix that if it needs to be fixed? Why is there a discrepancy?
It's interesting because I believe, and I'm not going to say this with 100% certainty, but about 90% certainty, that Brooks said heartworm preventative and flea and tick prescription medications are available over the counter in Australia. And so some of the cost of care, and a large portion of the cost of care in the United States, is pharmaceuticals and our markups on pharmaceuticals, which is why certain companies are out there trying to compete in the pharmaceutical side of things. So if you pull out the pharmaceutical side of the cost of care, that annual wellness visit now goes from 400 to 200 when you take out heartworm, flea, and tick. And when you take out the cost of Cytopoint at $100 a shot or thereabouts, and Apoquel and some of these different things, when you start to split out the pharmaceuticals from the medical, I think you might be a little bit less stressing to the pet owner. So it's really, it's just an interesting, different business models. Cody, imagine, and I don't know what the heartworm problem is in, let me call it Calgary instead of Calgary, or however you pronounce it. But if we started to have to provide, if we became more like human healthcare and lost our pharmacies, maybe we wouldn't actually perceive to be as expensive when you add all of the pharmaceuticals in.
I agree completely. And I think we need to have that big conversation of what is our base cost. It's not just what is the cost of the pet owner, but what are we paying in comparison to the rest of the world for our cost of goods, right? I look at my top 40 biggest ticket items on my COGS, right? And it's exactly the things you just mentioned: Librela, Silencia, flea and tick, heartworm, my IDEX consumables. My IDEX consumables are the biggest ones, right? Like, and I hate how expensive they are. It's preposterous how expensive they are in comparison to the rest of the world. You're exactly right. My numbers are the exact same as yours, right? It does add a big layer. And when you see all these conversations around pricing, you know, a lot of media coming out of the US right now on cost of care, half of it is the pharmaceutical cost and
the lab.
and the in-house lab, right?
Yeah, and the lab costs.
Wait,
Yeah.
Oh, reference lab too, not just in-house. I mean,
Yeah,
$245 for a blood profile.
I mean,
Or
we all just
thereabouts.
got raked over the coals by that guy on TikTok, who was, did you guys see that? I'm sure you did. The
Yeah,
doctor.
the MD.
I don't disagree with him.
I know, like maybe that's where we need to make some changes too, is start putting more value on the services we can provide and less value on the labs and the pharmacy.
Well, I've been yelling for the last year in my practice. I can't wait till Chewy is in Canada selling flea and tick, because I don't want to anymore. It's such a huge portion of my pharmacy. The reason that FenVet doesn't sell dog food is because we expected a Chewy to come to Canada, and I didn't want to have, you know, that transition in my future. And then I'm looking at my pharmacy, and we do a bad job managing our pharmacy, right? It's millions of dollars a year, you know, on the shoulders of a technologist, in comparison to how efficient a company like Chewy could do it. I want Chewy to come and take all of my chronic drugs and my flea and tick and food sales, so I can just operate an efficient hospital without worrying about, you know, shrinkage on $1 million worth of inventory. So yeah, I think that's a big question, right? Is can something offloading a lot of these costs help us in the long run? I think it's possible. If you're being inefficient in managing your pharmacy, that costs you money, not makes you money.
Well, the other thing too that we need to really look at is our standard of care on some of these things. Like the one that just drives me crazy is the required heartworm test before you can get your heartworm medication.
Yeah.
Because now we know that heartworm medication actually can treat heartworm disease if you have it. So there is really, it shouldn't be a requirement, it should be a conversation. And there are many things we do that we're treating as requirements, but I think they should be more optional conversations based on what the consumer wants for their pet.
You mean,
Kelly, I want to throw a variable out there, and
sure.
then I'll let you guys bring it home. But there are a number of countries that have been more impacted by national corporations buying practices. The United States, Australia, the UK. How much has, and all of them have had difficulties with this cost of care conversation and access to care conversation. How much has the impact of national corporations had in some of the discussion we're having, and how much of it, is it going to influence Mexico? I know they're talking about it. Asia, they're talking about it, of corporations heading into those marketplaces. So there are some external variables that become very interesting in this conversation as well, that aren't just the private practitioner, but the influencers from outside of the private practice.
Well, as someone who lived through that, I worked at a privately owned practice that was then acquired by a corporate. It changed a lot. And you are expected to deliver an EBITDA of 23 to 25%. That's the end of the conversation. That's what you're expected to deliver. You're rewarded based on that. You're penalized if you don't make it there. And I think it has really changed the independence, the veterinarian's ability to man their own ship. And it's an opportunity for the independents to come back.
Yeah, there's no question of that. That's, my life right now. That was, I always say, the best thing to ever happen to my career was corporate consolidation, because those are my competitors, right? What I'm seeing is people actually talking about it. I feel like I feel like I have been in an echo chamber hearing my own voice for the last 4 years, trying to shout from the rooftops that this isn't good. And I was almost like seen as a veterinarian hater, because I had negative things to say about what I was seeing with corporate consolidation, and people got their feelings hurt that were working within those environments, saying, no, it's not true. Things are better now. And I'm like, no, they're not. You're putting on rose-colored glasses. It just isn't the case. But this year, holy crap, I feel the tide's changing. I'm seeing people speak up that I would have never guessed speaking up. It's been pretty wild to watch.
It's good. I've had people talking to me, Cody, about it, and I don't own a practice. I haven't sold a practice, but I listen really well, right? So people are just like pouring their hearts out and feeling very lonely out there, that, they went through this turmoil and this pain, and it's very different. But I can also, going back, which this is a whole conversation for another podcast, is the underbelly of the selling. I think, what happens after a business is sold, and the emotions and everything like that. It's a powerful one. But to this conversation about doing work and being considered, and the cost of pharmaceuticals, and why people jump borders for care, and how care is different. Speaking from a pet owner's perspective, I really would like to go see a veterinarian who can do medicine. I don't want to have a pharmaceutical conversation. I want to have a medical conversation. My dog has a thyroid problem. Is he okay? How do we keep him straight? Or, the intersection of the teenager and the dog and chocolate doesn't always mix well. How do we get him back on track, right? Like, from a pet owner's perspective, I know pharmaceuticals are there, but that's not why I go to a veterinary hospital.
I would love to be able to start up a vet clinic in Mexico and in Australia and in South Korea and in Namibia. Like, how amazing of an opportunity would that be, just to see the differences and all of the different permutations of like what it's like to negotiate with vendors, where your profit centers are, what it would be like to be able to, ramp up support staff without worrying about, me blowing payroll every single month, and still provide, a great livelihood. So maybe I know Peter's gone now, but maybe he would want to potentially finance a FenVet Brazil, and then we can see what the true differences are. I'm always actively looking, and I've been an advocate that I think that it is possible to decrease the cost of care within veterinary medicine through leveraging different ideas, through innovation of thought, through innovation. I think that we can decrease our cost of care. I don't know how to do it yet, but I'm looking for those potential solutions to exist. Where will it go? I'm not sure, but I think that there is some efficiencies there, but I feel so hamstringed in terms of the, the system that exists, right? Like, who do I have to negotiate for my lab costs against, right? I got two big players and one of them owns vet clinics. I know that my competitors are buying pharmaceuticals at 30 to 40% less than what I can buy direct from manufacturers. And nobody's having that conversation as to like, how come I can offer care at an affordable price, but my costs are infinitely higher based off of, you guys have the inner workings of a vet clinic. If we're just talking about COGS, 20 to 30% of the things that I can barely negotiate on and have no control of my price exist, right? Compared to my competitor, they could cut that in half and have that much more profit and ability to invest in running their business. It's frustrating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sounds like we need more of these conversations.
Right? It sounds like we need a field trip to learn how to do it better in other areas. I think it is crazy that an office call costs $118, but like if it's not that at my practice, I don't meet payroll.
So Cody, like at VMX, more at VMX, I think, than WVC. Stacy, you can agree with me or not, but we have a lot more international people coming at VMX. It'd be interesting to pull some of the attendees who are coming from other countries and put them in a room and go, okay, let's look at the COGS. What do you guys got? What do we got? Why is it different? Right? Like apples to apples comparison. What are you doing? What are we doing? Then we don't actually have to open up a practice down there, Cody. We can just have a conversation, right? But the field trip sounds lovely. Is that a world tour? Do we get to start in one country and then go to another country and then another country and then all that? Because that would be good. I think you bring up a lot of good points today, both of you and Peter, when he was here, about the differences about care over our borders and care within our borders. And I'll wrap it up today because Peter's not here. A couple of the things I saw was choice. Like you two were saying, I don't have choice. I don't have choice on some of these COGS. I feel like my hands are tied. Like if I could slash these prices, I could offer lower prices to my patients, right? My clients. That would be really cool. Other countries are doing it. Why can't we do it here? We didn't have an answer, but I think the place to start is with the question. And Cody, you're in Canada, you're not in the United States, but it sounds like you're having some of the same barriers that hospitals in the United States have.
Yeah, there might even be more barriers.
Yeah, we don't know, but maybe where we need to start is having conversations instead of isolation. Getting people in a room from different countries and going, what do you got? Because there's power in numbers, there's power in knowledge, there's power in understanding. And out of that could come some really cool things, right? So maybe we put that in the horizon about maybe something Unfiltered Vet Discussions could do at a future conference. All right, we brought up some good topics that I wrote down for future podcasts. So stay tuned, everybody who's listening. You'll hear more about this at unfilteredvetdiscussions.com. Until later, we will wish you adieu or a goodbye, or what are some goodbyes in other countries?
Adios.
Adios.
Au revoir.
Au revoir. There we go. Thank you, everybody. We will connect soon.